Thank you. Hi, everybody. I'm Greg Petroff, and I'm going to talk a little bit about designer's perspective. In the ISDI program, I manage the design thinking and user experience modules, and I want to talk a little bit about why design matters right now and some of the things that are happening from a technical perspective that are making design a skill that people may want to have acquired along the way. It doesn't mean you have to become a designer, but there are a set of methods that designers use that are incredibly useful and becoming more important in organizations as we move forward. So like, what's going on right now? So there are a bunch of emergent trends that you hear people talk about in the Valley, from machine learning, Internet of Things, the big discussion around security, both in sort of our political realm, but also just in terms of how people work. Edge computing, and I'll talk a little more about that in a second. Blockchain, these are all technical advancements that are occurring at a kind of a blistering pace, and they all mean different things. So in the machine learning space, this space is moving dramatically fast right now. So a little bit over a year ago, Google's DeepMind beat the world champion Go player. And it did it in a way that was really novel and no one had seen before. And it was considered an impossible game for a computer to learn. And there was a learning model that was created in DeepMind that was able to beat the greatest player in the world. And that started to demonstrate the power of AI. So we're hearing a lot of that conversation going on. I work in Google right now. There's a lot of conversations in Google around machine learning, artificial intelligence, but there are many other people working in the field. And this space is moving very rapidly. So the notion of training systems to understand behavior in the world is really going to dramatically change our world. Internet of Things, Cisco estimates that there'll be 50 billion devices connected by 2020, all with their own unique URL, talking in the internet, that people talk about your refrigerator. This is probably more like pumps and machinery and equipment that sort of power our world, electrical systems, et cetera. But it's going to dramatically improve the efficiency of our infrastructure and change the way that systems are delivered and how maintenance is done, right? So you're going to see in the aircraft industry, you'll see condition-based maintenance. So they'll take a jet engine off wing when it needs to, not on a regular basis, but based on the operating behavior of that engine, based on the analysis and some deep learning models that are connected to it. So this IoT space is going to dramatically change how our world manages resources. Security. We talk a lot about security in the world right now. I think the greatest threat to security is actually humans. We make mistakes along the way. But there's a huge conversation around cloud right now, and one of the primary draws towards cloud is it is fundamentally a more secure environment than most corporate IT environments. So a lot of transition and conversations around how do I secure my information, how do I keep people from accessing it. We've certainly seen the weaponization of malware and those kinds of things happening. It's becoming a huge trend that we have to be paying attention to. Edge compute. The cost of a CPU is so inexpensive now that for high-value assets, why not put 100 cores right next to it and run analytics at the edge so that you can understand how machines are operating and give better insights into their operation. So again, dramatic changes in terms of how things could happen. What happens when the MRI machine at the hospital has artificial intelligence and 1,000 cores and can crunch through that data and give you a much more precise diagnosis from a healthcare perspective than it currently can. And the cost factor of adding that improvement to that MR machine is basically negligible because the cost of the compute has become so inexpensive. And then things like blockchain, right? So, secure transactions which enable communities to exchange value with each other. And, in the blockchain world, it's financial, but it could be used for a variety of other things. Are changing our notion of how we connect things together. So all of this transformation is going on under our noses at the moment. And of course, we have all these disruptive platforms. And we've seen them. These are all the usual use cases. Things in the financial services like Stripe, which is a payments engine, or Square. And the logistics side, Lyft and Uber. Housing, Airbnb, what it's done to the hotel marketplace is pretty remarkable. And computing infrastructure, things like Amazon Web Services or Google's cloud platform. these are dramatically changing how people can build software. And I'll talk a little bit in a moment about what I think that means. So the first part that I want to talk about very quickly is this notion of disruptive business models. A non-incumbent can enter a business space with the technology platforms that exist today with a new business model and disrupt that incumbent player. And if you haven't been disrupted yet, you need to be paying attention to the fact that someone could enter your marketplace and disrupt. So there's a huge opportunity for people in this room who learn these skills to go work for standard brick and mortar organizations, companies and groups that have been around for a long time, and just bring the ability to look at the future in a new way and bring new business models as a service, the share economy thinking to the conversation. We talk about infrastructure as a service, right? So this is what part of the Google Cloud Platform or what AWS does. This is the rental of compute, right? Instead of having to have your own data center, you rent time on somebody else's data center that can provide that service at less cost and can scale elastically. So if you're a very small startup in a garage and you come up with a great idea and everyone wants to buy it, you don't have to worry about it. They'll scale with you automatically. You can grow based on need. Platform as a service. So this is this notion of decomposing software into small Lego bricks that you build and assemble to build software applications. And this is changing the way that we build software. In the past, if you had to build a software application, you did the whole thing. You did entitlements, and you did database, and you did the core logic, and you did the IP that was unique to your application. Now you can pretty much consume most everything that you need as a service and just focus your attention on a very small window of what's special about your company. And you can take products to market that might have taken 18 months in a matter of 10 to 12 weeks. And that dramatically changes the game. That means that you could be doing very well in a market and someone could come in with a software application and disrupt you very quickly with not a lot of effort. And then obviously software as a service, right? So the ability to have a software platform that people can rent as a model. And the interesting thing is if you look at this model and you think of a traditional software as a service platform like Salesforce, they built CRM, and they had to build the whole thing. They had to build the business model, they had to build their own infrastructure, they had to build their own platform as a service, and then they deliver CRM. If you were building CRM today, you wouldn't do that. You would go rent time on Google's cloud platform or AWS, you'd do your own platform as a service, you would subscribe to services from other vendors, and you would focus your attention on building the best CRM application possible, but buying everything else as a commodity from somebody else. And then the last mile there is really experience as a service. How do we create compelling applications that fit like a glove for your consumer, for the audience that you're trying to attract? How do you build something that meets their needs, that feels like it's part of what they're doing? It's becoming easier and easier to do. So there's this whole new set of things happening, and what it means is there's a new way to build. And this new way to build has different rules to it than what people have experienced in the past. And we also are in this other kind of moment where the way that we think about building systems is different as well. So in the past, we used to think about systems of record, right? If you're in the business space, enterprise resource platforms, ERP, it had lots of different applications that allow you to do your travel or book your expenses or manage your HR profile. Then we moved into sort of the world of systems of engagement, which is the Facebooks of the world, where it's all about the social graph and communicating with people. And we're now moving into this new area of what I would call a system of assets, where it's all about you. And context is what's king. Everything is coming towards you at that moment. The systems are smart enough to triangulate all the desires that you have to provide you context and information that you find valuable. And maybe it's not valuable to someone else, but it's valuable to you. So this notion of context first is really interesting, right? Algorithms are going to start to determine our experience. They're going to decide, hey, I know where you are. You're at Hana House, and you're drinking Blue Bottle coffee, and you're meeting with your friends at ISDI, so I'm going to make you an offer based on those 3 pieces of information that could be valuable to you. We're going to see all these disparate data systems are much easier to connect to each other through APIs. So it's easier to mash up and build interesting systems. And certainly location, as I talked about a second ago, is going to become very, very important. We already know this when we're out in the world with our phones and we decide we're hungry and we go Yelp and we look for a restaurant near where we are. And then the behavior model is really going to be focused on a unit of one, like what your interests are. So a lot going on. And you know, the CEO of the company I work for right now has talked about this move to an AI first world where assistants are going to become more prevalent in the things that we do. So, wow, a lot of change going on. So what do we do with that? How do companies consume all that change? How do they manage through that? And there are some issues that we have to address. So the first part is that nobody actually understands the new ingredients, right? This is almost like learning new cooking. You have a mental model that people have carried around for a very long time, and there's a lot of ambiguity and uncertainty. What happens to me if someone enters into my market and disrupts me? How do I become activated in this environment where there's so much change happening so fast? Back to what Amir talked about, the 5 years instead of 25-year pattern. It might even be a 1-year pattern that you're worried about. And I think one of the things that's interesting about the ISDI program is we're going to be teaching people how to be more facile and adaptive in this environment. And the big reason why this happens is business today, the prediction framework, their mental model of how to solve problems is based on 20 years of experience, and the world changed and no one noticed that it changed. And so that experience is actually not that relevant to problem solving today. No one actually knows how to cook with the new ingredients. And so it's a problem. We have a new ingredients and we need to learn how to build some, make a new meal that tastes good. Now the good news is how to build is solved. We have all this infrastructure that makes it super easy for us to build applications and experiences and digital environments and change businesses altogether. And if you can master that toolkit, you can transform businesses. The big problem is what to build and why. And that's the problem that I think that faces a lot of companies today. They look at their existing business model and they say, we've been successful, but is it going to continue to be successful? What do we do next? How do we get to the next condition? So one of the solutions I will provide is to start to learn to think like a designer. And why is that the case? So design is kind of core to strategy. Designers are, they're sort of ifnographers. It's a term I invented, but anyway, they're the what if people, right? They generate lots and lots of ideas. They're possibilitarians, for lack of a better term, right? And so sometimes they're not good at converging, but they can definitely give you and test lots and lots of ideas. And that generative process that design goes through is really useful in this new environment because no one knows what the path is. So why not just start making things? Research, design thinking, this process of getting customer-centric, watching people at work, observing your customers, getting close to them is becoming more and more important. This notion of learning to be abductive instead of deductive, abductive, this notion of exploring the possible range of outcomes is a really important construct to learn how to do. Designers are great at this word juxtaposition. All that means is you take two crazy ideas and you put them together. Preschool, taco restaurant, put them together, what do you get, right? Well, that's an awesome idea, right? So, maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but the notion of composition actually allows you to find new things. And the big process is around making. And my position right now is we do way too much thinking before we make things, and we need to learn how to make to think, over thinking to make. And so if I could leave you with one idea that we're going to try to teach in this program, or one idea just to take back to where you work in this new world with all these new ingredients, the way to learn how to cook is to start cooking. And some of it's not going to taste very good at first, but eventually you'll figure it out, and then you'll be the first people to bring that new meal to an audience, and you'll be incredibly successful, and the opportunities are really, really awesome. And so I think the last slide I'll give you is kind of where we're headed. Today we're in this very sort of incrementalism mindset. Businesses are like, I just want to make it 5% faster or 2% cheaper. We need to move more to a contextual environment where there's more collaboration, more work. And in the future, the stage 3 space for business, from my perspective, is really about multidisciplinary strategy teams. It's about customer councils, getting really, really close to who your consumer is and knowing them really well and learning adaptive product development so that you can move really fast. And with that, I think I'm done. So I'd love to invite Jenny Ming from Charlotte Russe up to come talk to us. And she's going to talk to us